Awkward pause. Apparently I have to sit on this chair,
Right.
and you're going to sit in that chair. They checked out our profiles.
Well, you know I used to live in fear of Barbara's reviews of our advertising, so.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't handle Mattel. Right. More awkward pause. Okay, so the point of those, I mean, there's a million of them, but the point of them is that there's probably no single subject that's more important to human beings than the weather. In fact, I think anthropologists will tell you that the original reason why human beings started using media was basically because of the weather. It was, I mean, the most preserved physical media we have is those cave paintings, which dates back to the last ice age when people were trying to basically, well, survive and use information about the weather, record and distribute it to, you know, gain a competitive advantage, and they think that's why we're here today. So that was just kind of a setup to, you know, remind you that this information we're going to be talking about isn't just media content. It is something that is supremely vital to our survival, evolution as a species, commerce, culture, you name it. There's no subject more important than the weather, and now David Kenny gets to shape it for us. So just a brief introduction. Sorry about that awkward setup, but there was a reason for it. So just a quick intro. I don't think there's anybody in this room who probably doesn't know who David Kenny is. You know, a lot of people use the term rock star in our industry, but you're the legit. So, you know, David probably created the, well, what would be considered generally the, like, original, you know, preeminent digital agency back when there was no digital, and developed it into the modern day Digitas, which became the crown jewel for Publicis. And then he took over strategy for Publicis, created VivaKey, which was probably the first kind of agency holding company structure of its kind to truly integrate digital, traditional media and advertising and marketing services. And I think a lot of organizations have emulated that since then. And just to show that, you know, David doesn't like to sit still, and he's always evolving the way he talks about media evolving. He moved over to the serious deep dive tech side with Akamai, which I'm sure most of you know what it is, but if you don't, they're the company that really powers the cloud. At least a third of all content transmitted over the internet is going through an Akamai backbone. And more importantly, the most richest, powerful media content, all the video stuff you see, is probably going through Akamai servers. I could go on and on and on, but David has also been involved in the publishing side, you know, as an advisor and on the board of Yahoo, which has been an exciting period to follow that story. But he made the actual leap over to the publishing side as an operator with the Weather Channel companies. Okay, so I actually want to start this by picking up where we left off the last time you were on this stage. It was actually the stage at OMMA in New York in the fall of 2010.
Okay.
But you said two things, well, you said a lot of things that I've been thinking about ever since, but there were two things, and it would be better for me to actually show the clips of what you did so that it could set up the next question, and then I'll stop talking and let you go. So if we could just roll those two back-to-back clips, they're worth it.
And there won't be an OMMA in 10 years for sure, because everything will be digitally delivered in order to manage it. And I think this dream that's been true for a long time, that television would move to IP, is finally happening because we have solved the storage problem, we have solved the distribution problem, we have made the speed work. The people who make televisions have finally figured out that they're really computers, and we're building the capacity to make that happen.
And the second clip?
I think it's more likely we have to have kind of 4 petabits by 10 years from now in order for all media to be consumed over the internet. So some of that's a bit technical, but I think that whole infrastructure is moving. I think what I didn't see, and I was even on the board of this company, what I didn't see until I was in it is how much this changes every week. This deployment is naturally happening because people are demanding it. I think the infrastructure is running much faster than the agency community. I think the infrastructure is running much faster than a lot of the tools who are shuffling down here to find their share but are not looking at this massive change. Some media companies are leaning right into this. Others are a little bit more worried about protecting their incumbency. But people have moved on, and there's enough economics in it to keep putting the deployment out that it will happen. And I think it's really important that you set a goal. If you want to be here 10 years from now, and you want to be a player in the industry, what's more important than your intellectual property today is the speed at which you adapt and change. And I think really setting a goal, if you want to be in this industry, to run faster than the cloud is key. And the cloud's moving fast.
Okay, so thanks for bearing with me and indulging to that. A couple of quick observations. One is, according to that first statement, we won't be here in 8 years because you predicted our demise. But that aside, I also realized...
Not everyone's demise, just those who don't keep up.
I also realized we were not using Akamai because the quality of that video sucked. But, you know, just picking up. So a year and a half later, you're now running one of the preeminent publishing companies. How are you going to keep up with the cloud? I mean, given what you know about the speed of change and the acceleration of all this.
Well, you forgot to say I like clouds so much that I joined the Weather Channel.
Well, I think we wrote that in the promo copy, but...
All right, good enough. And I do. So some of my friends from Weather Channel are here, so they will tell you I have not changed my view on speed. I think certainly velocity, two things determine who lives and dies right now on the media side, and I believe on the agency side: velocity and differentiation. Mm-hmm. But differentiation doesn't last long because the devices are changing. We get a new tablet every year. We get new televisions every CES. The infrastructure does continue to build out. Akamai probably grew fourfold during the 1 year I was there. So you see it happening. And therefore, what I'm focused on in our companies is to make sure that we do run fast. So we're spending a lot of time looking at how do we make decisions, how are we organized, how do we approve things, how do you run in parallel so that the company can move fast. I think the second thing is to make sure that every aspect is differentiated. So we're looking at everything from our forecast, which is better, to the stories we tell with our forecasts, to the maps, to the talent, to the programming we do in the evening, to the storytelling. All of it has to be differentiated. And then you have to keep going faster at differentiating again.
Okay. So I do want to talk about your technology because Weather Channel was an early innovator of technology. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the early days of cable television, you built the most supreme infrastructure because you had to deliver all this local local content inserted. And you've kept pace with that all along the way. I think your apps are the most distributed, or second most distributed of any app developer in the world. Makes sense given your content. But given that speed of change, where do you think, and I know you're only here a couple of months, so it's tough to...
I move fast.
Okay, yeah, I know you move fast. But where do you think you need to place your biggest bets in the near future to stay at that pace?
From a technology standpoint? Yeah. Mobile is what's driving our incremental growth at the moment. Because we find our mobile users, and you're right, we're the second most downloaded app on the tablet, one of the top 5 on all the phone platforms. And what we find is people want weather more. So once people get that app, they're using it several times a day. And we have to keep it interesting, so they have reasons to come back several times a day. We're also finding that they want to communicate about it. So there are 200 tweets per minute about the weather, right? So people talk about it. And I think if you're in danger, or you have loved ones in danger, you're tweeting hard to find them and tell them to get to the basement before the tornado comes, and it saves lives. So I think it's much more of a community communication device. And we have to keep innovating the way that works. And I think we have to be courageous to not have it all be about our app, but how our app intersects with all the other social networks, how our app intersects with all forms of media, how it intersects with life-saving organizations like the Red Cross. So we're certainly, I think, expanding our view, but mobile will lead us. The other thing that mobile does is take us worldwide. So you may have seen in Barcelona, Nokia announced that they were going to preload our app on all their smartphones everywhere they're sold. So I think our 150 million unique monthly users could easily grow to 500 or 600 million in the course of a year or two solely by mobile.
Okay. If we could show the next quote. So, I mean, that's a great quote. It's one of my favorite from George Carlin, but he makes a great point, which is your content is something that's so ubiquitous. You're not just competing with every other media outlet out there that reports on the weather. You're competing with my ability to look out the window and assess the situation. What a lot of people don't realize is that Weather Channel companies is actually supplying the data to a lot of those other sources out there, including the National Weather Service, commodities dealers on Wall Street who deal in energy and commodities-related weather futures. Can you tell us a little bit about that kind of B2B data that people probably don't see on the front end, you know, the consumer-facing part of your business, and why that's so important to Madison Avenue?
Yep. So, well, we have a division called WSI, Weather Sciences International. All three words are important. The science part's key because weather is a science. Everybody can look out the window and have some sense of what it feels like right now. But people do care what it's going to be look like in 5 days and 10 days and beyond. And getting that right is hard. It takes literally hundreds of thousands of equations all solved at the same time because each equation about the wind or the pressure at different levels around the world all influences the forecast. So we built that. We built that over 3 decades. It's got a lot of cumulative algorithm. Other people who step in and think they're going to forecast the weather better than us don't do that, and they can't. And it is a better weather forecast than any other forecast you can get from any other source. So that has value to people who really need to know. So airlines, for example, they subscribe to us as their weather department. It makes a huge difference to their economics. The people who buy and sell energy, they buy a subscription from us because it makes a difference. A lot of local television affiliates who want to really differentiate their local weather from the others, they also buy from us. So people who really care and need to know the weather, it's better. That science, and it's also global, and actually to predict weather you have to know the whole world because the wind blows all the way around. So when you put all that together, that science has a real advantage and a scale advantage, which gives us better data. It's not a commodity at all.
So what I'm really interested in is the fact that you're also supplying this data to this community, the advertising agencies and marketers directly, where obviously a lot of this conference and conferences like this are talking about the shift to a whole real-time data infrastructure, a real-time behavioral marketplace. I can't think of a form of data that's more vital to so many products and services than, you know, the weather, whether it's travel, microphones, you know, all these different products and services that we depend on. We probably don't even think about them as weather, but they are. Tell us about how that's being applied and where we could possibly go. I mean, in this new world of attribution, how does weather data play into targeting a consumer?
Well, you can use the data in lots of ways. So we have retailers who use the data to build models to, first of all, determine what's going on sale that weekend, what's going to be out in the parking lot, what's going to be at the front of the store, what merchandise they need to order, if it's perishable, what they need to do. So it's very helpful in the whole supply chain, and then that can influence what you advertise and put on promotion. Travel companies, movie companies, car companies, weather influences all those decisions in profound ways. So knowing it, you can really trigger it. So at a basic level, it's useful. I would say secondly, though, weather is such a conversation piece. It's the most talked about topic. And most brands want to be talked about. That's how you break out today, is to get people to discuss your brand. And when you can connect your brand to the weather, it increases how much conversation can be made about it. So there's more than one ways that our data and our platform are used for people.
If we can show this next image. I love this image because I know you're from the Northeast as well, but
Yep.
it was the first time I saw a weather occurrence discussed and talked about in media terminology. And by that I mean, when I watched the coverage on the Weather Channel and even the local weather services in my community, they weren't talking about the impact of Hurricane Irene in terms of wind velocity, precipitation, even loss of life. The metric they used was the number of people that were knocked off the grid, literally. It was the number of people displaced from the media grid. And it was the first time, I mean, this, Irene ironically wasn't even a hurricane, it was a tropical storm, but it had the most devastation because it hit the Northeast corridor from Washington up to Boston and knocked out power grids. And it just really made me think about how integral weather data is to media data. And I was just wondering if that experience left an impression on you as well, and also how that could be applied in a material way in terms of modeling, you know, all the stuff we're doing in this room over the last couple of days, whether you actually will become, in effect, a data management platform because you have this integral insight. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a couple parts to that. I mean, first of all, I think what we learned in Irene and which we know is electricity is important. Most media is delivered over electricity. You have to have a fallback. It's called mobile. Right. It's when there were tornadoes through the Midwest a couple Fridays ago, mobile is what saved lives. Mobile is what also let people living in their basements know it was safe to come out. So mobile is a huge part of this, and I think being able to have a battery-powered device is important. So first of all, yeah, they're interrelated. Your bigger issue about data, I do think there is a core part of the Weather Channel companies that's a data company. The data is not just the weather data. The weather, it just gives us a mindset that the weather data leads to local data because very few people go to the homepage, they go to their zip code. That's what they really care about. Most people on the iPad have up to 10 zip codes they care about. So that's important. It tells us who they are, where their loved ones are, and where they're traveling. That data is also useful. Again, it's conversational. Weather relates to what are you going to do. Weather determines, are you going to the movies or are you going to the beach? Are you going to take in are you going to go to a restaurant or are you going to go on a picnic? So there's a lot of lifestyle aspects to our data as well. So I do believe we've got a broad reach. Everybody cares. 150 million people use this every month. With a real richness, that data relates to a lot of different topics. So we are using our data. We're combining our data with other people's data. And I think increasingly we'll sell data as much as we sell advertising.
You know, you mentioned this hyper-local aspect of how you provide data to the user, you know, directly to their geolocated device now. But you're also starting to back-channel their data into your national programming. I mean, the kind of clips you're getting about local weather phenomena like tornadoes and stuff, a lot of that is user-generated now. How do you see that interrelationship between your user and your curation of content playing out as we go through the future? Because in a lot of cases, they're better, you know, eyes on the street than your cameras are.
Well, we can't be everywhere, right? Listen, I think the ability for users to generate great content continues to grow. Both the photography, you know, if I look at what Instagram has done with the iPhone, it's spectacular. And all of this is feeding us. Because again, it's very conversational. People want to talk about the weather and they want to, if they can share it visually, they want to. And we're very happy to use it. We believe there's a real community around the Weather Channel. So we're absolutely using that data. And it can be done local. Because I think, again, we don't need all content to be national. We need it to be relevant to people. So I think it will continue to grow. I think it will continue to be curated by us. I think it will continue to feed our stories. It doesn't so much help the forecast, which is important, but it certainly helps telling the story of what's happening now.
I mean, just to go back to Irene for a minute, one of the most interesting other aspects of it, it was the first time I saw people use the media to activate people to prepare for a storm in that way. And a lot of the knocks after Irene were that the media overplayed the magnitude of the hurricane because there wasn't a lot of loss of life. My reaction was the media did such a good job of explaining to people that they prepared for something. How can the Weather Channel activate all those users out there in a better way to actually help activate people around weather phenomenon? And I don't just mean near-term things, but you know, some of the bigger picture stuff that's influencing our environment.
Well, I think, unfortunately, something is definitely changing the environment, and there's a lot of pros and cons on that story, but we scientifically see that in our work every day. And we do need to change the way we behave to make the planet last a little longer, but we also have to get ready for more fluctuations. There will be more weird weather. It's not good that there was no snow. People enjoyed it, but there will be follow-on effects this year. We've already seen, devastating tornadoes now because the temperature is just not right. And as we see more weather fluctuation, we have to warn people more. So a lot of our mission is to make sure all of our media, whether it be our website or mobile, or certainly everything we're doing on television, all has to help people understand it. But we're also going to make sure we're feeding, particularly social media, because what we really care about is making sure people stay out of danger.
Okay. If we could show the next image. Okay, so we led off with that opening quote, "When it rains, it pours." And I believe from what I studied in college about advertising, this is one of the first, modern brands. And it branded itself, its USP, around the weather, interestingly. I think it speaks to what I was saying earlier about how human beings ascribe so much of their world around weather-related information. So my question for you is, how do you leverage that in terms of your storytelling? You're obviously going into more long-form programming. You're doing some wonderful stuff with the Coast Guard and stories like that. But how do you leverage the storytelling ability of the weather beyond just imminent, immediate information, but more as a narrative?
Well, our viewers, they insist that we be weather in the morning. They need the facts. They need to know what to wear. They're planning their day. In the evening, they want a little more entertainment, and they like our entertainment. And what they're coming to us to see is what is fascinating and unpredictable about the weather. And you best see that in jobs that are really outdoors in the weather. So we started with Coast Guard Alaska. We've then got a great show about lifeguards here in Southern California. We've got something right now called Ice Pilots set up in the Northwest Territories. Then we've got guys working on wind turbines coming out in a couple weeks, and it continues from there. And there are just great, heroic people out there who do important jobs for us, who have to outwit Mother Nature. And people like those stories. People like them because Mother Nature is a great character in our stories because she is unpredictable. And it's fascinating, the things she does and how quickly you have to respond to that. So it's helping us with that. I think that you'll also see us do more storytelling on the website, which can relate to things we produce, but also things our users produce and how those work together. There's a lot, everybody has stories of where they've confronted Mother Nature. Sometimes she wins, sometimes we win, sometimes we work together. She's a great actress. We're very lucky to have her star in all our shows.
Great. I think maybe we have time for one or two quick questions, but then we got to move on with the show. Does anybody want to know what the weather forecast is for tonight, or what the upfront will be like, or?
Check your iPad. We have a good app. Hi, Barbara.
Hi. I just wanted to ask. They're going to turn it on. Okay. If you could update what you said last year about outrunning the cloud, what would the 2012 version be?
Yeah, if I could just remind what he actually said. He said that within 10 years, and this was a year and a half ago, that the transmission speed of the internet backbone would be about 4 petabits per second, which is enough to transmit all media over the internet, and I assume to a handheld device as well.
Yeah. Depending on how many devices people use at the same time. That projection hasn't changed, and I think for people who were at CES at the beginning of the year, what you saw was a whole bunch of connected devices. I think in the new iPad, right, from last Friday, is a television. You're not waiting. We're all used to television. You change the channel, it's there. You push the apps, they're there. So this is going to change, I think, the whole view of what people expect. And we are involved today with a bunch of smart TV pilots. And what we find is people are self-programming. They're not buying this whole long, set of cable. They're buying just the programs they want. It's just like the iPad. People put 60 apps on, they use 8. Good news is they all use weather, so that's good for me. But I think I think the next thing I would say that we need to understand is just how the whole self-programming is going to work. People are going to choose what's important to them, and they're going to have to do it in a community way. People care that other people watch Mad Men, right? Because they talk about it. So you don't want to watch a program that you like if no one else is watching it. So we're seeing people really try to figure out which programs they're going to sign up for or subscribe to that connect to what other people are going to watch. What's interesting to me is that people put weather on before they put Netflix on because they know everyone's going to talk about that, but then you got to go from there. I would say the flip side of it that I'm a little worried about is people also choose things that fit their point of view. So I'm a little worried people choose just the news that fits their point of view, that it leads to a bifurcation. We're trying to stay very apolitical in weather, but when we watch the things around us, I think there is a risk of people not finding enough by serendipity. And I think we all have a role in programming to help people identify new things.
Well, I think maybe, okay. So I think we're kind of out of time anyway, but I want to thank David. And I think, yes, serendipity, but we all are unified around this common thing, this planet. Whether the weather is in your own backyard, we can all relate to natural disasters. And I can't wait to see what next, rate of transition and speed you keep up with the cloud. I'm a big fan of the Weather Channel and your apps, and I know you are. So I want to thank you for being here and sharing a little bit. I know it's only 2 months, but good luck.
Well, the good thing is weather's not going to go out of business. If it does, we have a bigger problem.
Right, but it can put some of us out of business.
All right.
Thank you, David.
Take care.